I'm sure many people in this room actually work on these, but have you ever felt a war?
Have you seen it with your own eyes?
Heard it?
With your ears? Thankfully, I hadn't been me though. But this past May, I got close. This past May, I co-led a trip of preventative students to Israel. We visited Kibbutz Nir Oz, one of the many communities devastated on October 7th. Nir Oz will always be remembered as the kibbutz where the IDF did not reach until October 8th. One quarter of the kibbutz was either murdered or taken hostage on that day, and most of the remaining hostages are from Kibbutz Nir Oz. I will never forget that day. It was drying, it was hot, and not in every way. We walked in, and we saw in the kibbutz office the mailroom and social hall were untouched from October 7th. The bullet holes in the glass still remaining. The mailbox for each family had stickers: murder, taken captive, freed. And you can see the names of the families that we've read about over these last years, like the Bidas family. One of the residents of the kibbutz, Rabbi, he took us on a tour of the kibbutz. He shared his family's story of survival on that horrific day. We strolled along a pattern in the center of the kibbutz housing area, picturesque walkway lined with small homes filled with closely together. There's lush vegetation in the center, including a well-known cactus garden that the kibbutz is known for. He stopped and said, "This pattern brings me so much joy. Now I swings in my neighborhood." Finally, Harak brought us to his home, a humble dwelling with 2 small bedrooms and a small compound. It was completely burned out, except for one room. It's become their stateroom. Barak and his family were in that safe room, which doubles as their children's room, on October 7th for the entire day. The family of 4 was saved because they were only one of 9 families to install a simple metal latch inside their safe room. Barak and his family huddled in their last safe room as it slowly filled with the sun. The stories he told us that day are too brutal to share on this holy day, but I will share one thing. One thing that really shook me in my core. Barak shared that in the shelter, as they fought away the smoke in the darkness, they could hear what was happening outside. Terrorists seeking Ivory let us in where the IEF. And then, music. Barak's Denimer Arabic music being played as the kibbutz residents were being slaughtered. He described it as wholesome like in Hardy. And everyone, men, women, seniors, and many, many children. The children who came actually stole Barak's son's bikes, which were later found in Gaza. And everything I share with you is truly verified. The experience itself was horrifying and traumatizing, but for a kibbutz known as a left-leaning kibbutz that often helped Gazans get medical aid and work for peaceful coexistence, this last part, the truth, that it wasn't just Hamas terrorists that hardened the massacre, but Gazan civilians, including seniors, women, including mothers, and their children, added to the heartbreak of the massacre. As this man showed us what used to be his home, you could hear what sounded like persistent thunder in the background. But there were no clouds. It wasn't thunder. It was Israeli shelling of Gaza. There was an operation happening at the very moment. We were just 1 mile away from Gaza. Boom, boom, boom. You heard it over and over again. And you know that people, yes, terrorists, but also civilians, were likely dying at that very moment. Now, here's the test. If you're a hard right-winger, Meyer Marcana's words ring true to you right now. If you're good to them, you're weak, and if you're weak, you're dead. From that view, Gazans are Amalek. Mercy is weakness. The only option is force. Keep just shelling, don't be until it's finished. We're on our own for now. Healing in the world in Kunalan will have to wait. Now we're through a hard questions. The story can be twisted another way. The kibbutzniks, after all, were occupiers. The children were future soldiers of the Israeli armies. When he lives under such desperation, you can't hold them accountable for how they fight back. I'm sorry to say, those Israelis had it coming. Now here's the thing. If we were alive, these insane reads on my stories would be on the top of my newsfeed. And maybe some of you would throw a light in one direction or another. But the question is, how do I see what I experienced? The answer is, it's complicated. In fact, that was the phrase that our group chose for t-shirt that we made for the trip. Of course, we have to make t-shirts. And the one word that we all the regulars here read on to sum up our experience, no matter the sort of the political spectrum, was the word in Hebrew, word kavuz. In man, Hebrew, morkav means complex, since it's something composed of many parts. Think about like a train of heavens. The same word. A diversity of parts in the same track. The word translated as complexity. In other words, not so simple. Not black and white. However, it becomes pretty straightforward when viewed from thousands of miles away on social media. We live in a polarized world where the most extreme views are supercharged and then it's spread. I don't know if you've asked yourself this question, but I can. Why does life seemingly so extreme nowadays? Are we the Cromleys? Is this generation living on Earth a problem? The answer is yes, but not entirely. In her growing generations and what they need for America's future, Dr. Jennifer Twenge argues that what shapes us the most is not the events that we live through, but the technologies that we grow up with. That's why she calls those born since 2013 the polars. Why? Because in 2013, smartphone ownership in America passed the 50% mark. And since then, our phones and the social media inside of them have trained us to live NBA screens. Here's the truth. It's not just the kids. Whether you're 16 or you're 18, that smartphone in your pocket pulls you towards polarization. The screen is designed to amplify outrage, to report the most brutal takes. So the question is, are we doomed to be polarized? And my answer is, not if you use them as anything to say that. I'm going to preface this as do not worry. I am not going to ask you to throw away your smartphones. Your iPods and droids are safe. Except for Shabbat athletes. Photo posing is something different. A different way to look at the world and athletics. The Torah says that light is about holding opposing ideas, together in one. Judaism believes both equally and equally in polar opposite ideas. particularism, the belief that the Jewish people are unique with a special covenant and mission that is ours alone, and universalism, the belief in the dignity and value of every human being, regardless of background, seeing all of humanity as created in the image of God. God is God of all peoples, all religions, all humanity. So you might be asking, Rabbi, how can both be right?
Yes.
They are, right? Common explain. I want to take me back to the day to make me want to go to Kibbutz Nir Oz. I'm standing outside where rocks burned that wrong. As the co-leader and rabbi of the trip, my primary role was to help the rabbinic students process their experiences and their observations. I'm not there to tell them what to think. As we heard the artillery fire and felt the ground shading, 2 students had to leave the burned out home and take a break. And I went with. I shuttled it back and forth between the students, trying to help them through this challenging moment. The first student here said, Rabbi, what are we supposed to do? We hear the bombs constantly right now, as on every explosion needs people, maybe children, probably children, dying at the other side. Innocent people, babies. I know from osmosis, they put civilians right in the middle, using them as shields. And Israel keeps falling into the same trap. And it's just so wrong. This war, it feels endless. And Rabbi, I can't stop asking, what does this say about us morally as Jews? Isn't this deep still? Isn't there a swing where compassion has to be saying enough? It has to end it. I sound the fur in silence. I didn't have the right words at the time, but I had another few to walk over to. He was grimly with anger. Rabbi, he said to me, I don't understand how anyone can still talk about Palestinians with compassion after this. Look around us. We saw the bullet holes. We see the burned homes, the name of the murdered families. After Nir Oz, after the Nova Festival, which we visited that morning, he said, how can anyone still say, but what about Harrison? Where's the compassion for Arpney, for the Jews? I feel like I'm losing all sympathy, and maybe that's what it takes to survive. Rabbi, am I wrong to feel this way? And again, I sat in silence. I didn't really know the right words to give to him. And as I stood next with them, one student weeping for Gaza children, another enraged for Jewish children, I thought, how can they both exist on the same trip? How can both voices be true? And how are these two voices going to be rabbis for the same people? Now, I didn't have the words for them at the time. And I want to give you a little rabbi say. Sometimes silence is the best for cause. But after having had some time to think, I want to propose a solution. There's a famous scene in Pillar on the Roof where the villagers hear that news from the Jews in another shtetl. They're being evicted from their homes by the Tsar. One villager said, let's not worry about outside news. We should only worry about ourselves. Tevye says, you're right. The other kind is radical. The street of Lepitus is Perchik. He interrupts the brutal field Jews, and he screams, Jews must care about the outside world. How many cloaks our eyes you can justice? They look in Tevye. And Tevye nods in approval and says, he's right. But Reb Tevye, he's right. They can both be right. And Reb Tevye says, you're also right. And honestly, That's Judaism in a nutshell.
It's two opposing ideas that can't work together, but as we find out, it's the only thing that can make a bond become one. Think about it like as the Hebrew magnets to the sand charge together. Nothing happens. Put opposites together, you create a strong bond. Our sages taught the same thing. They called it monolothed l'shem shamayim, an argument for the sake of honor. And they even dared to say, these words and these words are the words of the living God. And that's what this day, Rosh Hashanah, is about. It's 2 days, which are actually one. The rabbis call this Yom Ha'arisha, the one long day. So yes, we're having services tomorrow, but our sages wanted you to consider it as just the second part of a really, really long day. That's Hamel. Who is Rosh Hashanah for? Is it for the Jews, or is it for all of humanity? The answer, both. In the Zifon Yoda service, we'll hear it plainly. Government Rizdoa and Lot, two non-Jews, and also remembers the comment of that Avery and Yitzhak and Yahweh. Both universal and particular, side by side in the same service. And I want you to read the words in your Matzor because we'll see more of that in every prayer we say. Now, after much reflection and thought, I realized that the two students, the two distinct but opposing voices, were actually authentic Jewish voices. The Pur Jew and the Pesach Jew. Jewish writer Yossi Flein Malatni writes, Jewish history speaks to our generation in the voice of two biblical commands to remember. The first commands us to remember that we were strangers in the land of Egypt. And its message, don't be brutal. The second voice commands us to remember how Amalek attacked us without provocation. The message is, don't get naive. The question is, can both types of Jews be members of the same tribe? Let alone ours, the same people? My answer is yes, and more than that, those Jews, they actually live inside in each one of us. Few of us are pure Pesach Jews or Purim Jews. Most of us carry those voices, tugging at us in tension all the time. To the Pesach Jew, I would say, you're right. The Torah's first teaching that every human being is created that Tselem Elohim is God and image. That's your core bounty. And it's ours too. And I'm noting the Oakby Mishnah Sanhedrin that says, whoever destroys a single life is as if they destroyed the entire world. Not a Jewish life, any life. And whoever saves they came in single life, it's as if they saved the entire world. And you are right. Compassion cannot be discarded. Even in moments of terror and rage, Judaism commands us to see the divine heart in every person. To remember that every human story matters. And to the current Jew, I would say, you carry the memory of Amalek. You know it well that we have been rise against us simply because we were born as Jews. After seeing your O's, after walking past the burn ums, after reading the names of the murder, your anger and your grief, they're not only understandable, they're deeply Jewish. The Torah says, remember what Amalek did to you. Do not forget. And you are right. Survival demands vigilance. If we are not for ourselves, it will be for us. Jewish history is cause to protect one another, especially when the world turns away. In the end, we are the only people who have each other's backs. Kol Yisrael Haravi Zebazet, every Jew really is responsible for one another. And as the grandson of 4 Holocaust survivors, I can attest to that. And if they were standing right before me right now, I would say, you are right and you are right. And they would say, but Rabbi, how can they both be right? And I would say, so which one of you is it? The Pesach Jew or the Fern Jew? Compassion or survival?
The universal covenant or the particular covenant?
And I would quote Tedman. And I would say, you are right and you are right. And you know what? Both of you can be right.
Both of your voices live inside us because Judaism needs both voices. Yossi's Divine the Langer reminds us that the Jewish story commands us, don't be brutal, don't be naive, be Jewish. And this is what Rosh Hashanah is teaching us.
Today is Yom HaRaz Ha'olam, is birthday of the world, when all humanity passes before God in judgment. And at the same time, it is a day that we recall God's special relationship with our people. 2 days that are really one. Universalism and particularism together. Our sages knew that if we split them apart, we fracture our soul. But when if we bring them together, the compactive Kesaf with a vigilant and a plural, compassion and vigilance, we create a strong bond. Hillel shared this truth in his seemingly contradictory statement. If I'm not for myself, it will be for me. But if I'm only for myself, what on? And if not now, when? It's not a choice between extremes, but a sacred mission to uphold both truths at once. This is the answer I could not give on Kibbutz Nir Oz, but it's an answer I could give you now. To be a Jew is to live in that sacred tension.
To insist on both. To refuse to collapse to one side.
And in the 10 weeks of it, we can practice this synthesis in small ways. One act for Klal Yisrael, one act for Israel, one act for Koletan, for all humanity. One step of vigilance, one step of deep passion, so that our souls is safe whole. And it brings me to the pain that I see in many of our families, the pain in our country. Since the last Rosh Hashanah, I see more Jewish parents breathe when their children seem to care more about the suffering of those that they see as their enemies than have their passion for their own people. Their children breathe when they felt their parents care only for Jews, turning their faces away in front of others. For many of these young Jews, their vision of social justice Judaism does not match with what they see in the complex Jewish nation state of Israel, with its borders, its dangers, its enemies, its diverse population. These arguments are not theoretical. They cut across our holiday tables, our WhatsApp groups, our chat messages. They're in our hearts. And what we experience as a community echoes what we are now seeing across this great country. Since last Rosh Hashanah, we witnessed something we thought belonged to another era. Deadly political violence on our own soil. Since last Rosh Hashanah, the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, the most prominent Jewish elected official in America, and they on fire laws on the night of cast. State's legislatures have been gunned down in their halls. Even the most polarizing public figures, people who some worship and admire, while others abhor, have been targeted and killed. Whatever you think of their politics, the reality is chilling. For decades, Americans seemed immune to this kind of bloodshed. No longer. I often share my own story. I'm a first-generation American, the child of immigrants who taught me that America is great, not only because of how Jews were treated here, but because America is different. In this country, the grudges of the old world were meant to be left behind. But those same grudges are creeping back in. The us versus them mentality, the belief that compassion is weakness and violence is the only answer. This is the trav that is taught and hires throughout history. United he stand, divided he fall is not just a slogan, it is a truth of human history. And yet, our tradition does not leave us alone. The prophet Malachi envisioned the day when the lives have become to turn the hearts of parents to their children and the hearts of children to their parents, so the land will not be struck with mother daughter destruction. Malachi the prophet do what we know. When the Vahenji generation is great, when we see one another as part of the same story, the future itself is at risk. And here's the good news. We don't have to wait for the legend. We don't have to wait for the Messiah. We can begin in that work now, turning our hearts toward each other. Like the cherubim above the Ark of the Covenant and face one another. When Israel was in right relationship with God, we too can face one another with open arms, making space for God's presence as well between us. This is what Shinmar requires. To face one another, especially those who we disagree with love, compassion, understanding, and also without surrendering the values and beliefs in the goal of the earth. That is the choice this Rosh Hashanah. Not to collapse the rehearsals and words of particularism, not to let brutality or naïveté dictate our path, not to allow extremism or violence to write our future, but to choose life in the sacred manner. For truth leaves life, or true is. Life that affirms our uniqueness and our shared humanity. Life that insists on relationship, even in disagreement. Life remains a future for our children and their children, possible after that. Before we get up, I have a little announcement.
All right, so at this time, Kim's here. All right. Okay, so since you've all sat so patiently, I have a little treat for you. I spoke about how we can't live in a black and white world. And so I'm giving everyone a black and white cookie. Before Musaf, and everyone gets their cookie, we're going to say the bracha, a little kiddush. Also, if you didn't catch every word of my sermon, it was very long. I'm sorry. I got you covered. I know that everyone, when you go to your Rosh Hashanah lunch, they say, what'd your rabbi talk about? Well, I have the sources out there and 2 articles written by 2 of the participants on the trip, 2 future rabbis, Shoshana and Harry, who wrote, both JTS students from our movement, spoke about their experiences. And Shoshana is going to be visiting us as a scholar in residence in January.
So we have to dip into the. Yeah, sure. You want this?